this and preaching this. If God is for us, who can be against us? We got to know that God is on our side. And a lot of times people think, well, I'm not perfect. I'm not this. I'm not that. It don't matter what you are. He's on your side. That don't make you right because he's on your side. Don't get it wrong now. But he is on your side. Right or wrong, indifferent, he's on your side. I love that about God. All right. I'm going to have to, let's see. All right, so I might need your help, Josiah. If you can jump ahead to segment 3. Not segment 3. This is going to be, there's a slide in there called Divine Significance. There you go. Right there. Go back one. Go back to, got a question for tonight. Our get plugged in question. That's what we want to get to. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you so much. Yes. Oh, yeah. Can you share the slides, please, with the at-home crew? Thank you for that reminder. And thank you so much, Miss Deborah, for last week. I know it was a last minute, getting you to lead the prayer last week and all of the stuff that we had going on. You are awesome. And I'm just glad this week is a little more peaceful. We still got some aftershocks and some tremors going on, but we coming through. You know, it's amazing. People just don't know what you go through on a daily basis. And as a pastor, I get my trauma, my own family trauma, and I got to share the church trauma and the different things that people go through in the church. And I tell you, the last few weeks it's been amazing. It's been something. Let's keep everybody in prayer. All right, so tonight, if you got a chance to read a little bit of Genesis 42, you probably realize that we're dealing with Joseph in Egypt. And tonight, to kick us off, I want to share one scripture from Genesis 43, verse 32. This question for tonight is, should African Americans consider moving to Africa? Should African Americans consider moving to Africa? And that might seem like an easy question to answer for a lot of y'all, but I'm going to give you some context. This is Genesis 43 and 32. If those of you who have it, you can see it. It says they served him by himself. They're talking about Joseph. And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. So Joseph is in Egypt. They think he's an Egyptian. But when his brothers came, his Hebrew brothers came, they separated them. Joseph ate by himself, and the Hebrews ate by themselves because they thought that they were Hebrews, and Egyptians don't eat with Hebrews. And so they kept this separation. And so if you come to a country where people don't like you, and they want to be separate from you, why would you force yourself to be with them? Why would you try to force yourself to sit at their table? And I use the example of school, like high school kids, and you notice a group of kids that they don't want but certain people sitting at their table. Why would you force your way in and say, no, you're going to let me sit at this table? And so the context for this question tonight, should African Americans consider moving to Africa, is, should you stay in a place where you're not wanted? What do y'all comments? Get some candid comments and some discussion about that. Okay.
I would be sure if the Africans will accept us as well as, other Africans. We're considered Americans. I don't believe that they'll be just so warmly welcome us
Mr. Greer.
Yeah, I also believe that, but I believe that I'm not from another country. I'm from America.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to want to go back to a country I don't know anything about, but it's not my home because I was born and raised in America. So America is my home.
Okay. Awesome. Anybody else?
I agree. I think even now with Africa, most of them are white. A lot of Africans in different parts of Africa there are more whites there. And I'm like Charles, this is my home. And what little bit of African I am, I don't know what it is. And I'm not gonna start over again, so this is it.
Well, I mean, in South Africa, there's a lot of white people in South Africa, but if you go to like Kenya, or if you go to Angola, or if you go to Ivory Coast, you ain't gonna see a whole lot of white people. And I don't even know if they would even call them white, because you gotta realize they were colonized by French, a lot of French people. A lot of people in Africa speak French, so they're not really technically like what we would call white. It's a little different, because a lot of Canadians, they are French as well, and a lot of the Africans that were in America, they went to Canada instead of going to Africa because they didn't really want to go to Africa. And they kind of feeling like you guys feel like they're not from there. But you're from somewhere whether you like it or not. Just like none of y'all have been to heaven that you know of, but that's where you're from. And so there's a part of you that is connected to a place that you don't even know about. You're saying that, but you may not want to go there. But some people, you may want to go there because you'd be surprised when you go to a place that you ain't really been there, but your DNA and your body done been there. You came from there. I had a guy came to me in Atlanta Bread one day. He said, "Hey, brother, what country are you from? What country are you from?" And I said, "What country I'm from?" I was like, "What is he talking about?" And then I looked and I listened to his accent. He was asking what country I was from because he was from Africa, and he assumed I was from Africa. So he was asking me what country I was from. See, a lot of people in America, when they talk about Africa, they think Africa is a country. Africa is a continent. There are many countries in Africa. So when an African in America sees another African, he asks him, what country is he from? And when I told him I was from America, he was a little disappointed. He was like, oh, okay. And this last week, I was talking to a Hispanic brother. He's from Mexico. And he was asking me the same thing. What country are you from? And I said, well, I was born in Brooklyn. He was like, oh, okay. And so he was thinking the same thing. He's thinking because I'm dark-skinned, he's from Mexico, he's thinking I'm from another country, possibly Jamaica or Africa or some other country. And a lot of people are surprised. When you go to certain countries in Africa, you will see people that look like you. But not in every country. There'll be certain countries, and then there'll be some that don't look nothing like you. But if you ever go there, you'll be amazed to find people that actually look like you. So anyway, I wouldn't say everybody should consider moving to Africa for the reason of staying there, but maybe you should visit. But if you're in a place where people don't want you, that's a consideration. I'm not saying you should move to Africa, but I'm saying if people that are on TV saying, oh, they killing our people, and man, it's a system that's against us, and all, if it's really that bad, maybe you ought to consider moving to Africa. And guess what you might find out? You might not like it in Africa either. I sent out a post this week about in Nigeria, where the Christians in Nigeria, there are more Christians in Nigeria being persecuted, being killed in that one country than all of the people being persecuted in the whole entire world. That's amazing. In one country in Africa, the Christians that are being persecuted there, it's more of them in all, I mean, you talk about Ukraine, and you talk about all these other people, right in one country. It's amazing. So it's just something to consider. I've considered it. But I decided not to. Mainly because my wife, she don't have no plans of going to Africa, so I'm
Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at the scriptures. All right. So it says, Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers with their flocks and herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen. The significance of the land of Goshen is Goshen was a beautiful land. Lush, green, fertile, but it was a land for shepherds. And the Egyptians don't like shepherds. They have a history of not liking shepherds. And we're not real clear why they don't like shepherds. There's a few different viewpoints on why they don't like shepherds and why they detest them and they hate them. Some people would say because of the status, that they're above them. Some people say because a shepherd is not a high status. Some people say it's because they had a history of fighting with a group of shepherds called the Hyksos in Egypt. And so there's several different viewpoints on why the Egyptians don't like shepherds, but it doesn't really matter sometimes why somebody doesn't like you. The fact is they don't like you. It could be something made up, but if somebody doesn't like you, they just don't like you. And so what Joseph did was he made sure his family stayed in Goshen because he knew they would be safe from the Egyptians. Because if you got people that don't like you, they're going to do stuff to you. They're going to set you up. They're going to tell lies on you. They're going to make your life miserable. So he set it up. He said, tell them that you're shepherds. So they put them in the land of Goshen. So it's almost like a form of segregation. They're in Egypt, but they're in a separate part of Egypt from the rest of the Egyptians. Does that make sense? Which is what a lot of us do here in America. We're in America, but we're in our own little churches. We're in our own little schools. We're in our own little circles. We're on our own little jobs, our own little businesses, our own little communities. And it's very evident. You know, I went to see my son. He was in Atlanta. About a year ago. We went to Atlanta. And when we got to the side of town where my son was, I noticed a downgrade in the yards. And I noticed a downgrade in the buildings. And I noticed a downgrade in the streets. And I was like, okay, it must be getting close. And that's sad that you feel comfortable going into a town and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse till you get to the worst side of town. Oh, yeah, I feel comfortable now. I'm at home now. Because I know the white people ain't coming around here. Because there's trash everywhere, there's dope dealers, they got pictures of Martin Luther King on the side of the building, beautiful artwork. But you could tell it was a lower grade community. Is that what we want? Now, you could be a king in Africa, or you can live in a dump in America. Do you know that in Africa, there are black people that are kings? You walk into their governments, and it's all black people. The kings, the presidents, parliament, all of the different people are there. People that look like you and me. But we'll turn that down so we can go live in the ghetto. So we can go live in Section 8. So we can live somewhere way down below where God never intended us to be. So I'm just saying, maybe some of us ought to just consider moving to Africa. You could be a king in Africa. You could be a queen in Africa. You could be the leader of the military in Africa. Can you do that here? If God is in it. Yes. Amen. Let's go to the next slide. So tonight's lesson is about divine significance. So here's Joseph. He's a Hebrew. He's in Egypt. And if the status quo was as it normally is, there's no way a Hebrew would be in the position that Joseph gets to. He has a divine significance. It's not natural because the natural order is for the Hebrew to stay with the shepherds. The natural order is for that Hebrew to stay out in the fields, nowhere around the aristocracy, the Egyptians, the higher status, the hierarchy that they had. It was for the Egyptians. But here is Joseph. He got in under the radar, and he ascended to the highest of heights in a nation where people did not respect his people. Yes. So I'm telling you to consider going to Africa, but also consider that we have a higher power, a God, that even in America, you can still ascend to the highest of heights, even in America. And this is what Joseph gives to us. There's a man, go to the next slide, please. There's a man who taught black missionaries here in America. And this is so cool. because this man, he was a preacher. He started a school in the 1700s. Before we even had the Declaration of Independence, back in 1773, he started a school for black missionaries. He was actually sending black people from America to Africa with the gospel. This is before we had the black churches, the indigenous churches, any of those things. This man was sending people back to Africa. Now, part of this, the reason they allowed him to do that was because the white people at that time, they had a plan. They were forming this new nation. And what they wanted to do was get all the black people out of America so that they could form their new nation. They had got what they wanted out of them. And they said, we done got what we want out of them. Now, let's send them back. Let's send these missionaries with them so they can teach them the gospel. But we want this pure white nation here. Do you know that Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, was one of the proponents of this? He was a big proponent of this. He said he wanted to rid America of all of the black Africans to make a pure nation. And so in 1773, they allowed this man, Reverend Hopkins, to start this school. He was training up black missionaries to bring the gospel because they were used to worshiping what we worship. They were used to worshiping God. So they were like, we can't go back to Africa and then we go back to voodoo. So they said, let's take the gospel back over there where it actually came from in the first place so that these people would be more comfortable moving back to Africa. Well, because we're still here today, evidently that didn't work out too well. But there's three things that Reverend Hopkins was teaching to his black missionaries. Number one, he was teaching that the gospel helps to alleviate suffering. To alleviate suffering. Because the people in America were suffering. People in Africa are suffering. People everywhere are suffering. But he was teaching that if you have Christ in your life, then it alleviates, especially the worldly suffering. We're all going to suffer. We're all going to go through. And there's things we're going to go through for Christ. But when you have Christ in your life, it alleviates. It gives you a peace that the world can't give you. He also taught this idea of disinterested benevolence. And so the idea is that you should be good to people that you really don't have any interest in. Not just people that look like you, people that you like, but people that you may not be interested in, may not like. Just have some type of kindness towards people that don't look like you. And then the third thing was this kinship compassion. And this wasn't something that Reverend Hopkins specifically just taught. This is something that kind of innately just we all have. We have this compassion for people that are like us. You know, if you're skinny like I am, you kind of have compassion for skinny people. If you're overweight, you kind of have compassion for people that are overweight. You know, if you have trouble hearing, you have compassion for people that have trouble hearing. And so if you're black, you tend to have compassion for people who are black. If you're white, you tend to have compassion. It's just something that just naturally kind of happens. And some people are taught another level of kinship compassion that's a little extreme, and that's where you get into black supremacy and white supremacy and all these other things. But there's a natural, just a natural, and it's, I believe it's from God, that we just have a kinship, a compassion, a love for one another. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's when we get to those extremes and we want to kill all white people and we want to kill all tall people, we want to kill all gay people. When you get to those extremes, that's when there's a problem. Comments or questions about any of those things? All right. Let's go to the next one. Let's deal with this suffering, alleviation of suffering. So there's two different kinds of suffering. You know, there's a suffering that we're going to all, in general, deal with. And then there's some unnecessary suffering, stuff that we bring on ourselves because of the way we live our lives, because of the choices that we make. You know, some of us are going to go through sickness just because it's just one of those general, it's just a random thing, man. It's this virus is floating around in the air. Some of us are going to go through sickness because we ain't eating right, because we're not exercising, we're not taking care of our body. It's two different kinds. And so there's some unnecessary suffering. He's like, some people don't have to suffer the stuff that they're suffering. And that's the stuff he's trying to alleviate. And he believes that the gospel helps to alleviate that type of suffering. Let's read from Genesis 42. Let's go to the next. Anybody who has it, Genesis 42, we're going to read those first 5 verses. If you're in here, you can ask for the mic if you want to read, or if you're online, just unmute. Let's read verses 1 through 5, Genesis 42.